Good afternoon. I ask people to take a seat, please. Okay, so this is the last event of the Portuguese Pavilion today, and we are running a session that names Portugal Foundations from Runners in the Climate Transition. My name is Julia Seixas. I'm a professor at Nova University of Lisbon, currently serving the university as a pro-rector for sustainability. And I'm very honored to moderate this session with so distinguished speakers. I will present very briefly our speakers and the foundations that they represent here. So we'll decide to go through an alphabetic order. So the first one is Aga Khan Foundation. It is very well known, but anyway, Aga Khan Foundation brings together human, financial, and technical resources to address the challenges faced by the poorest and the most marginalized communities in the world, with an emphasis on women and girls. And with us, we have Mr. Nazim Hamad, who is the diplomatic representative of the Ismaili Mamad to Portugal, as well as Mr. Paul Haller, who is the Director of Environment, Climate and Sustainability at the Aga Khan Development Network. So I invite you to make your presentation. Then I will present the next.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Madam Secretary of State in Energy and Climate, where is she? Mr. Secretary of State for the Maritime Affairs, the Ambassador of Portugal in Abu Dhabi, my dear friend, Professor Júlio Seixas, representative of the Portuguese National Council for the Environment and Sustainable Development, the representative of the the Calouste Gulbenkian and Serralves Foundation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. In my capacity as a diplomatic representative of the Ismaili Mamad to the Portugal Republic, I would like to convey our warm gratitude to the Portuguese government and to the Minister of the Environment for the honoring invitation to participate at this high-level event at the COP28 Pavilion. It is only fair to highlight the effort being made by Portugal on matter related with an energy transition, as I've seen policies implemented over the year and the leadership in important areas such as the renewable energies. It is also symbolically that Portugal is, for the first time ever, represented with the pavilion at the COP. Climate change, or better, climate emergency, is without a doubt a paramount challenge for the humanity, knowing no distinction of the country or border. A challenge which we must overcome, and is often effect with a great impact those who are already in a vulnerable situation, communities that struggle to have a basic need for their families and offer a hopeful future for their children. They cannot be behind it. And all as a global matter, climate change needs a global response. This means the engagement and commitment of all countries and international organizations, communities and individuals, in a spirit of partnership and collaboration and of shared values. The ethical principle that guides the Aga Khan Development Network as a group of development agencies created by the Somali Mammoth confers special importance to looking at challenge holistically and seeking pathway of collaboration of common causes and challenges, building resilience in communities and enabling them to access better opportunities. As we discussed dialogue and partnership, I reminded of a strong relation between the Portuguese Republic and the Somali Mammoth built over the decades based on shared values such as the defense of human dignity, the promotion of the pluralism, and the joint work toward enduring contribution to improve the quality of life of people. It is precisely this spirit, common commitment to global causes that has enabled to remarkable collaboration in the programs, including initiative developed by the Aga Khan Foundation, in international cooperation in many other areas of mutual interest. This relationship has been materialized by unprecedented agreements, including an international treaty in 2015, which has allowed the Somali Imamate to establish its global seat in Portugal. Today, we hope to showcase, although briefly, some of the work developed by the Aga Khan Foundation in our common question to address in the climate crisis. For that purpose, I joined by Paul Dalla, the Director of the Environment, Climate and Sustainability at the Aga Khan Development Network, who will take the floor. Thank you again, and muito obrigado.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to the climate work of the Aga Khan Development Network. AKDN's environment and climate strategy is underpinned by 4 guiding principles. I'll say a little bit about each of these in turn. So, AKDN situates its environment and climate initiative within the context of the ethical principle concerning humanity's responsibility for and stewardship of the planet. In other words, care of the environment is a duty of trusteeship, which humanity owes to other species, with each of us ethically bound to leave the world better than we found it. Responsible environmental stewardship is critical to ensuring that the Earth can sustainably support future generations. And it's also key to long-term sustainable development, by which we mean development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Second principle, focusing on the most vulnerable. The world's poorest people are the most vulnerable to climate change. Focusing on the quality of life and well-being of the poorest and most vulnerable is central to AKDN's mission. AKDN takes a holistic approach to improving quality of life, including health, education, culture, disaster mitigation, agriculture, economic livelihoods, and clean energy. Supporting communities to build resilience to climate change follows naturally from AKDN's commitment to poverty alleviation, improving quality of life, and sustainable development. Why is this? Because people are less vulnerable to climate change if they are not poor. A healthy environment, including clean energy and water, clean air and water, is a critical component of a good quality of life. And sustainable development, including better housing, better health and education, better energy and transport infrastructure, improves people's resilience to climate change. So AKDN is reducing its own carbon emissions and greening its own operations. AKDN is a large owner-operator of institutions and facilities, universities, schools, hospitals, factories, hotels, banks, etc., with a significant carbon footprint of its own. So we feel it's our responsibility to optimize AKDN's operations to consume less energy, use fewer resources, and produce less waste, and to improve our environmental sustainability and reduce costs. So all our agencies and institutions are implementing decarbonization plans linked to their budgets, and collectively we're committed to reaching net zero emissions by 2030. Fourth principle, influencing wider change. By this we mean leveraging our operations and sharing our experiences with others to raise awareness and increase impact. For AKDN, there are two pillars to influencing wider change. One is promoting sustainability in the supply chain, and the other is enabling future generations to engage with the challenge of environmental degradation and climate change through, for example, education and research on environment and climate at AKDN's schools and universities. So in terms of approach, AKDN's Environment and Climate Initiative has two aspects. One is looking at climate change in the wider context of environmental sustainability. So we situate our view on climate change within the wider context of sustainability on the understanding that the planet is in fact facing a complex planetary crisis characterized by climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution and waste, including chemical, plastic, and air pollution, and resource depletion, most critically freshwater depletion. And the other thing in terms of our approach is that we are taking an all of AKDN approach to environment and climate, making it a core strategic priority and cross-cutting theme for all of our various institutions. So we have a environment and climate commitment statement, which was approved last year, and this is the sort of highlights of that. And we're now working on translating that commitment into concrete action by the institutional capacities of the AKDN agencies and institutions. Now, what do I mean by the AKDN agencies and institutions? So we know about Aghan Foundation. It has a presence in Portugal. The purpose here is to show you the breadth of what AKDN does. We have a combination of for-profit and non-profit institutions. And as I mentioned earlier, we take a kind of holistic approach to quality of life with expertise and institutional capacity in a variety of different sectors. And here, besides Portugal, you can see that AKDN works in a diverse array of geographies with different ecosystems facing varied challenges. And of course, the environment climate risks that we are facing are multifaceted. And so AKDN's responses are multidimensional, which of course is made possible by the array of institutions and agencies that I mentioned. So I'm going to run through these really quickly in the interest of time, but really just to give you a sense of the kind of breadth of work that AKDN does. So we have sustainable agriculture. And these are just some examples, very quickly, of specific initiatives. Forests and ecosystems. And some examples. Healthcare. Education and research. Natural hazards. This is disaster mitigation. Buildings and infrastructure. Energy and industry. And the green economy. So there isn't time to go through all of the different dimensions in detail, but I did want to give you a sense of what we're doing. And we'll have time maybe in the question and answer session for more detail. But I would just say that in conclusion, given the scale and complexity of the climate crisis, AKDN is committed to a positive and practical approach to mitigation and adaptation that's grounded in hope, based on solutions, and focused on institutional action. So with that overview, thank you very much for this opportunity to present a little bit about AKDN's strategy on environment and climate.
Thank you very much for such a comprehensive and presentation with so many initiatives and actions across the world. Now it's time for Gulbenkian Foundation. Gulbenkian is a foundation that promotes the development of people and organizations through art, science, education, and charity for a more equitable and sustainable society. The foundation develops innovative programs and projects through, for example, grants and scholarships, social institutions and also organizations, not only in Portugal, but also in the United Kingdom, France, in the Portuguese-speaking African countries, and also in the Armenian communities worldwide. To speak about and to let us know about the Gulbenkian Foundation, Mrs. Louisa Hooper is the director of the Foundation's Sustainability Program, as well as the UK branch, as it is. Louisa has a very long career at the Foundation, I discovered when I read it, and since 2010 has pioneered environmental funding programs, namely the Climate and Ocean Program. So, Luis, the floor is yours. Can I just leave this one? Okay, maybe I'll just press that one.
Hello everyone, thank you. And firstly, just a huge thank you to the Ministry for inviting us to participate in this session. As Julie was saying, I'm the director of the Sustainability Programme across the whole Foundation, and also of the UK office, which is why I sound very English, because I am. The Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation was established in 1956 in Lisbon, Portugal, but has always also had offices in London and Paris. And it was established for the benefit of all humanity. As I know, many of you know, it encompasses a breadth of activities from grant making and scholarships to a cultural centre and a science institute. And we've been funding environmental work for many years with dedicated programmes in Portugal and the UK since 2008. In the last 5 years, though, we've really been also accelerating our journey on climate action internally. And a good example of this was the launch in 2020 of the Gulbenkian Prize for Humanity, which we were talking about on Wednesday. And please do pick up a leaflet, more promotion. So nominations for the next prize are now open, and I know all of you know some amazing initiatives, and we'd love to have you nominate them. So that's a €1 million annual prize for outstanding action on climate change. And then at the beginning of this year, in 2023, we launched a new strategy across the whole foundation, which puts equity and sustainability at the heart of our activities. And we really see equity and sustainability as two sides of the same coin. They're really kind of part of the same whole. Before I move on, I wanted just briefly to say a word about the image that you can see in the background. This was taken in Portugal by the photographer Nuno Rodrigues, and it's a diver, I think you can just see the diver, in a kelp forest, a seaweed forest. And we've chosen it because it's an illustration of two fundamental principles of our work. The first is connecting climate action and nature protection, because kelp is a great way to store carbon. And the second is always putting people in the picture, so people at the heart of change. So the new foundation-wide strategy spans all of our activities, grant-making programs, internal operations and initiatives, and also engaging audiences directly through our public platforms in a joined-up effort for action on climate change. But I'm particularly going to focus on two aspects, and the first is the dedicated grant funding programs. So the one on equity, which I won't say much about, but that focuses on access to care and access to culture. And in the access to culture, we're really interested actually in the connection between culture and climate, and how we can bring the amazing power of the arts to climate action. And then sustainability, which is focused on strengthening engagement on climate and ocean action. So the sustainability focuses on what we've called effective engagement for climate and ocean action. And that's because we recognise that for climate action to be fast and fair, we need to engage broad sections of the public, including those most affected. The image here shows our transition point pilot as an example of this approach. This provided accessible local level advice and services to address the issue of energy poverty in Portugal, with benefits for those who have least and also for the climate. We invest in effective engagement because we know it can build long-term public support for government action, shift social norms, and embed a sense of agency and hope. Our programme also recognises, as I was saying earlier, that our environmental challenges are connected. Climate and biodiversity are interlinked. And in this, the role of the ocean is often overlooked. So it's something that we've been working on for a long time. So we've particularly focused on that. And above all, we believe that people must be at the heart of action. Or in the words you see here of the International Energy Agency, net zero can't be achieved without the active and willing participation of citizens. Our programme has 4 key pillars where we direct our investment in research, capacity building, tools and networks to develop and deploy effective climate and ocean engagement at scale. Firstly, engagement that reaches beyond the bubble. In other words, reaches beyond all of us at COP, all those who are already engaged. And reaches beyond the traditional audiences of environmental NGOs. As part of this work, earlier this week, we launched an open call for funding public participation projects by NGOs and/or municipalities in Portugal. And please do check the website or speak to me or my colleagues for further details. Secondly, benefits to people prioritises the fair transition, an action that can bring more immediate benefits for communities whilst being good for the climate and nature. One example is the Gulbenkian Blue Carbon Initiative, which has been mapping blue carbon ecosystems in mainland Portugal. And you'll hear more about this, if you're around tomorrow, you'll hear more about this in a session at 12 here tomorrow. Thirdly, Change the Story is working with communicators and organisations to promote a positive, solutions-focused and people-centred story of action. And a story that's based on using the evidence of what works from social and communication science. There's now a whole body of research on how to involve people in ways that make sense to them, and we really need to be building on that. Our partnership on this line of action includes working with the UN Ocean Decade for Sustainable Development. And then there's their final line, which is Walk the Talk, where we're working in partnership with all the departments across the foundation to promote sustainability internally. In 2018, we officially launched our Gulbenkian Sustentável, or Sustainable Gulbenkian project. And this includes setting up working groups open to all employees. Our ambition is to reduce our carbon and environmental impacts and engage employees along the way, pioneering change through example and using our public-facing spaces and activities, including the Modern Art Centre and the Garden, to mobilise and inspire others. We work on a breadth of issues, as you can see here, including energy, with energy efficiency measures, green tariffs, etc., cultural and artistic events. Earlier this year, we published a study, a life cycle analysis of one of the exhibitions at the Foundation to really identify what the key impacts were and how we can reduce them. And we're working at the moment to embed sustainability and equity at the heart of the new Modern Art Centre, which will reopen next year. We're committed to rigorous sustainability reporting according to the Global Reporting Initiative guidelines. And the picture you see here shows our work on food. We've been working with partners to analyse all the menus offered in the staff canteen. So every day we understand the carbon footprint of all the food, and it's labelled from A to E. And in kind of an illustration of the connections between the internal and the external, we're now working with these partners to embed this approach in the catering company that we use across all of its work. That gives you a snapshot. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you for your effort to speak in this loudly environment. We have to focus. So the third foundation is Serralves Foundation. From the strategic goals that I got, I select one that I appreciate a lot. It is to develop and implement innovative educational programs aiming to raise the awareness of different audiences, contemporary art, architecture, and environment. Serralves Foundation used to organize with a major public impact, and it has been able to attract large segments of the general population. Mr. Rui Costa will speak about Serralves. He is a director of resources and special projects at the Foundation, which among other areas coordinates some of the projects that are sold to the different areas of the Foundations. So, thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening to all of you. A special compliment to, it's not here anymore, Madam Secretary of State, but Mr. Secretary of State, Mr. Ambassador. And first we'd like to thank the Ministry of Environment and Climate Action for the invitation to be here sharing with other institutions, Serralves Foundation, about its experience and contribution on the climate changes problems and how humanity and planet are facing it. So, to share in a very quick way, what is Serralves Foundation and its main areas of interaction, you should see right now a brief video. as we had the opportunity to see in the video, Serralves has a very diverse natural and cultural heritage and a multifaceted mission which aims to stimulate the interest and knowledge of all audiences in contemporary art, cinema, architecture, landscape, environment, and critical themes for society in its future. In this mission, sustainability, in a broad sense, of course, is always very, very present, even if we receive more than a million visitors annually. In this context, in line with the programming in general, educational references include sustainability literacy, the connection between art and nature, science and heritage, as well as critical thinking for the public and particularly for children and young people. Many of these activities also include projects that as an integrated manner embody social innovation initiatives aimed at students, citizens with disabilities, prisoners, as well as elderly and institutionalized young people. There are many initiatives that we develop, such as exhibitions, events, workshops, conference cycles, and talks. Focusing on the area of environment, as an example, of course, it would be possible to speak about everything. We'd like to refer our project, Plants, Carbon and Climate, the many activities we develop with schools, and here we have I have with me the coordinator of these programs, Mariana Roldão. She's the person who really prepares and make happen these programs, and also can explain after of this conversation what we need interesting about it. The events particularly dedicated to the importance of biodiversity and the climate change, like BioBlitz Serralves, and this is a specific project to the environment issues dedicated to schools and along a week and the weekend for all of public, for all of audiences, for families and so on. But we have other kind and larger events with these issues are very present, of course. Another example, the pond habitat and recent greenhouse next to the educational vegetable garden, completely renovated in recent months with sustainability and inclusive principles. Serralves Park, with this year celebrates this centenary. It's of course a very special scenario and setting that enhances the impact of all the environmental education actions we develop. The relation between environmental issues and the arts is something that Serralves can provide in a qualified and very concrete way. In this context, some of the most recently held exhibition should be mentioned. The Arts of Mushrooms, it's one of these exhibitions, or Your Life is Now by Olafur Eliasson, or an exhibition by Ai Weiwei on the forestation of the Atlantic forest, and so many others we could bring here. Science is today an important pillar for Serralves, particularly regarding the communication and dissemination of science and citizen science explained in our projects. For example, Serralves is part of a consortium for an European project. Is a project that involves several European cities, but about Porto, it consists on a creation of a positive energy district in nearby social neighborhoods and social facilities of Serralves. And Serralves is like the lighthouse of this project,
and is responsible for some dissemination activities and the activities with the communities nearby. As a basis for sustainability milestones, you can mention, for example, an 18-hectare park with an enormous diversity of species, or the fact that Serralves Foundation is the first Portuguese cultural institution to be certified with Community Eco-Management and Audit Scheme. Therefore, the Foundation recently established a strategy to reduce its carbon footprint through an action plan over the next 5 years. This strategy covers different areas such as operations, green area management, exhibitions and other programming, communication. All of these actions were divided in short-term and medium and long-term actions. It will not possible to speak about everything. We can mention as an example the installation of photovoltaic panels. This is a process it's ongoing. And about operations, we have so many actions to speak about, but the decrease of water leaks, choose environmentally friendly materials, major event certification, promote citizen science, engage artists with in situ materials production, choose suppliers with sustainable practices, reduce the production of paper-based communication materials, and enhance digital media. So this is our mission for the next 5 years, to have the reduction of 30% of our carbon emissions. Thank you, and of course all of you are invited to visit Serralves.
I tend to think that this is a kind of a conspiracy to finish right now and go direct to the wine and prestige delay. but we have some time for a conversation here. So first of all, it was let me say that it is amazing to see how many initiatives the three foundations already have in place regarding sustainability at a more wild, but also on climate. I have a couple of questions here, maybe one or two if you have the time to do that. That climate emergency includes a very wide range of issues, but I invite you today to talk about a particular one. And the particular issue that is becoming more and more important refers to the normal people, let's say the general public. Because people, when they came at night at home, they hear the news, and almost every week, one of the things that they used to hear is that climate records have been broken year after year. And what there are some research yet already done about it is that people are becoming apathic, others are becoming anxious, others are becoming even scared about it. And particularly the youth, the young people are becoming very anxious about when prospect their future. So maybe there is a huge in societies regarding the climate emergency, literacy, awareness. And we know that only with good information is able to ask people to take a positive action regarding this stuff. As Luisa placed in one of your slides, net zero can be achieved with active and the willingness of the citizens. So my question for you, the three, is I understand and I know that education is very intrinsic to the different goals that of the foundations. So my question is, how do you see the chance or even the priority to put this issue of filling the gap of literacy with the general public, with the normal people, in order to have them as a positive people to take the correct actions? Because usually people just don't know what to do except recycling is the first answer they do. But we know this is not enough. We have to go a little bit more. So climate emergency is a complex issue. How can we leverage these issues through your programs? I don't know who's going to be the first one. Maybe the lady?
Thank you, Julia. Very briefly, I mean, it's this issue is at the heart of our program. I think we see it as critical that everyone is kind of involved and on the journey of climate action and nature protection, and that I think this word literacy is interesting, but kind of challenging as well, because there's now lots of evidence that just having the knowledge, because there's a lot of awareness, people are aware and they are worried and concerned, but they're still not necessarily taking action. So there's this gap between kind of knowledge, awareness, and then actual action or behavior change. And actually there's evidence that people change their behavior and then they change their kind of what they think about things. So it's almost the other way around. So I think the more you can design programs where people are actively participating, whether it's in sort of action on the ground or whether it's in forums that enable them to debate and genuinely, meaningfully influence what kind of policymakers and business do, the more you're going to get that. And it's also about helping people understand, because people aren't stupid, they know a little bit of their own recycling isn't going to change the world. But the more they see how they can act as individuals and as a community together to influence governments, to influence business. I think the more change, there's a real relationship between the sort of bottom up and the top down. And there, as I was saying earlier in my presentation, there's lots of evidence now about kind of the social science, the way people think, the way people behave, what kind of messages kind of people can relate to, what kind of other people they relate to, and we should be really using this in the environmental movement.
Thank you. It's a very important question that you're asking. I think, just from an AKDN perspective, we work on environmental curriculum within the context of our own schools, which we run and operate in Eastern Africa, Central Asia, and South Asia. We also, through Outcome Foundation, which of course the minister knows all about, work with public school systems in terms of environmental curriculum. And then we also have 2 universities, so we do research on, for example, the health impact of climate change in Pakistan through Outcome University. And University of Central Asia has as one of its 4 tracks environmental studies. But I think just to respond to the question that climate anxiety, we see it everywhere. We see it's a big issue, and I think that one of the things about knowledge is that it can be empowering. And what worries me, especially with young people, is obviously we need to focus on the crisis and making people aware of the severity of the crisis, but the danger of talking about the crisis without talking about solutions is that you make people frightened, you create anxiety, and anxiety can lead to despondency and apathy and lack of action. So I think when we talk about education, it's very important to talk about the problems, but also the solutions. And there are solutions to all of what we're talking about. There are solutions. And I think lastly, I would say that we need to be careful not to put too much emphasis on individual behavior, because frankly, the really big issues are fossil fuel subsidies and policy problems, policy questions, which are far beyond the ability of the individual to. We live within a framework, right? We live within a societal framework, and so I don't want to see us put all the emphasis on the individual and individual behavior. Thank you.
So, in fact, common people, as you said, have different attitudes on these climate change issues. We have people that demonstrate a lack of knowledge about these things, to those that express the resignation, another's hope. And what we do every day, and try to do it in Serralves, is the kind of awareness and education with different audiences. Every day with schools, with so many students that go there day by day in different kind of activities, and in an informal education that together with formal and school education, we try to get a better result and a new conscience, but also in some special moments, in great events that we develop in some weeks or weekends, and you can reach thousands of people in a few days. For instance, in Serralves in Festa, we have almost 300,000 people in a weekend. And the Fall Festival also with 95,000 people on the weekend. And BioBlitz, that I spoke about in a few minutes ago, it's very, very connected with these environmental issues. So it's a way to get closer to that common people with a different kind of speech, connected lots of time with art, also with performing arts, or as we saw, inviting artists to organize exhibitions with a huge impact. For instance, we have Art at Park, that it's a way to express art in a large scale in the park, and approaching these issues, and people in a creative way start thinking the different also way. But those reflection moments, the conferences or talks, and we invite from all over the world specialized people. So the literacy is very important, and we can make it happen in different ways.
Maybe a Serralves em Festa, one of these editions dedicated to climate action? 24 hours ago. Okay. So I agree that we do not have to put the burden in individual action. I agree completely with you. The point is that people, when they hear these things, they ask for themselves to do something different. And most of the time they don't know where to start to make something. So this is the point. I think we have a time for a second round. It's a bit different. It's about money. We know that amount of capital needed to this climate emergency is in the order of trillions. Some international organizations have these numbers. And philanthropy is one of the great power regarding to leverage these individuals and communities according to this climate action. My question for you is, how do you see philanthropy as a catalytic capital in order to leverage long-term and systemic shifts in our way of living, meaning society or economy or public policy? Do you see a role for philanthropy to support this long-term and systemic shift? Because this is what we are talking about when you talk about climate action in the future. Maybe I got down first.
So yes, I mean, in terms of private philanthropy, very small percentage of private philanthropy goes for environmental climate type work. In terms of government donor money, more is now going towards environment and climate work than before. And I think that for sure, I think both can play a role. Both private philanthropy as well as donor funding can play a role in helping to change the way we think about the natural world, from shifting that way we have tended to think about the natural world in terms of humanity's dominion over it as opposed to stewardship of it. I think this is a critical thing, a change in our attitudes, right? Which I think there's a role for philanthropy. But one thing that does worry me a little bit with the increased funding for climate is that it should not be at the expense of funding for poverty and development, because as we know, it's the poor who are most affected by climate change, and also it's the poor who are most affected by environmental degradation more generally, because they live in poor conditions with poor water and poor sanitation. And so what I would not like to see is climate funding divert resources away from poverty and from development, because then we are making the poorest people less resilient to climate change, in fact. So I think that additional resources for environment and climate should be just that. They should be additional resources, not instead of money that is otherwise going for poverty and development.
In this case, Serralves Foundation has a different role comparing with Aga Khan or Gulbenkian foundations, because Serralves does not have its own resources to put in practice all of these strategies. It's in a different. Serralves has to attract the interest and the investment of others, from companies, for instance, that are interested to contribute to this mission and to put in practice all of these projects that we develop. So, in 1999, Serralves has been created between the state and 50 private entities, and nowadays are about 350, which means that Serralves has been attracting this interest, and what we do, it's with all of these other entities that we bring for this process. And of course, it would be possible without them.
So I guess two things. One, I think private philanthropy has a very special place in the kind of ecosystem of activity, in that it's independent and we can choose what we want to do. And so we can invest in things that aren't proven, we can take chances and risks, and we can also invest for the long term. So we can really sort of provide that capital that enables innovation, sort of the sparks to grow. And I think it's very important that we play that role, because actually no one else can really play that role. So that's one thing. The other thing, just to pick up on your comment about the risk of climate funds diverting money from support for poverty. I completely agree that the most vulnerable are most at risk, but I really think that without a functioning planet, everything else is not going to work. So really, as I was saying earlier, that kind of that equity and sustainability go hand in hand, and we need solutions that are really taking that into account, that are joined up and understanding that the most vulnerable are most at risk, and that we need to solve the issues around climate and the environment for those reasons. And if we're kind of smart, then we can, we should be able to do both.
So thank you very much. I think it becomes very clear that the Portuguese foundations are indeed front runners in this climate transition. We are approaching 7 p.m. So I think it's time to finish here. I ask you a big applause to our speakers this afternoon. And everybody's inviting for something very good at the back. Thank you very much.